A little while ago I made a video about why I buy so many Airfix kits, and I thought it only fair to make a video sharing my thoughts on the second most popular kit in my stash, and these are from Revell. I'm Matt, this is Model Minutes, and join me at the workbench today as I discuss my thoughts on Revell. So before I get into this, everything I say here is my own opinion and it comes from a place of love. I'd like to see Revell grow and improve over time. There are many positive aspects about their company and their kits that I really like, but perhaps there are areas which could be improved. So I think it's probably worth discussing my first experiences of Revell. So as mentioned in my previous video about Airfix, Airfix was the first brand that I experienced when I started modelling. However, at the time, back in the late 90s, early noughties, Airfix didn't make every single model that I wanted to build, and I really wanted to build a P47. Airfix didn't have one in their range at the time, so I was forced to purchase the Revell one. In my hometown there was a small little toy shop which had a small range of Revell and their paints, so I saved up my pocket money, went in there, found the kit that I wanted and purchased all of the paints to go with it. And I actually have the same kit here. Granted, this has a different paint scheme, but mine was an earlier boxing. So this tooling dates from 1999, and the boxing that I bought was the 2000 release. So I think I may have bought it the year that it came out. So having only built Airfix kits up until this point, and I'm talking like the old Spitfire, the Blenheim, the Anson, they are objectively kits that can be assembled and built into reasonably good representations, but I thought that that was, what model kits were like. But then I went and bought this, and inside here it was amazing. So old Airfix, they didn't have particularly good decals. The decals in this one was considerably better, but not only that, this kit featured recessed panel lines which I'd never experienced before. So coming from a background of building older generations of kits and then experiencing what was effectively the most detailed model I had ever seen. Now granted, I have heard in places that this does feature some issues to do with the shape of the aircraft, but at the time I wouldn't have been able to comment on that. It came with considerably more cockpit detail, it has a canopy which can be opened and closed, and it also came with different options for armament, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. And this was my first experience of Revell. So it would be fair to assume that all Revell kits from this point forward would be the same. And unfortunately, I was very wrong. So actually I was thinking about this the other day, and I think the next Revell kit I bought was the Hawker Tempest, and that's actually a really old reboxing from another company, I'm pretty sure, and that was all raised details, poor fit. There was a copyright date on the outside of the model, like it was chalk and cheese. So I was like, did I just get a bad kit or what? But then obviously you start digging and you start realizing that there's a lot of inconsistency there. But before I get ahead of myself, let's talk a little bit about the history of Revell. So from what I can understand, Revell as a company existed in the 1950s as a plastic manufacturer who would produce model kits for other companies and distribute them and import them into Europe. It would seem that they would continue to do this up until the 1970s, where they start making their own in-house toolings for their own plastic model kits. Today, they make a varied selection of plastic model kits in different subjects and scales, as well as 3D puzzles and remote control toys. In the UK, as discussed in my previous video, Airfix is the most popular company here, and if you go into a model shop you're going to find Airfix kits, but Revell is a close second. If you go into a model shop you're pretty much going to find either Airfix or Revell, but more oftentimes it will be both. And that's generally where I buy my model kits. I buy them physically in shops or occasionally online from different retailers. And that brings me to talk about their website. Whilst their website is fairly easy to navigate and find the products that you want to look at, everything there is very much catered towards the European market, which is absolutely fine. So I have never had the need to purchase directly from them on their website. It is worth noting that you can download the instructions from Revell on their website. However, this does take you to a separate archive where you need to find and download the instructions that you want based on the product code. I think it would be easier to download them directly from the product page, but that's the system that they've gone with. Additionally, some of the instructions I've looked at, I think it was like the B17 one when I was building that kit, it seemed to just be a low quality scan, and you can find higher quality scans on ScaleMates, for example. So more often than not, I'll just use ScaleMates as my modelling resource for that kind of information. As with most companies these days, Revell does have social media, and they seem to be fairly active on Instagram and Facebook, and I've even known them to reply to my comments when I've left some under their images and videos. However, YouTube is a slightly different area, and they don't really focus on their YouTube channel. They do have one, but it only has 3,000 subscribers, and they upload short product videos, lasting around 30 seconds, which doesn't really show a great deal. I think this is an area that Revell could improve to help get people excited about their products and also inform people about what's coming up. But that's a little bit about the wider side of Revell. Let's talk about the quality of their kits. So there are two kind of kits at the moment. You've got the older blue boxings, and also you'll have the new black boxings. I don't think I've got any of... Oh, I do actually. There's one up there. Bear with me. There you go. So with the newer black boxings as well. Effectively, they follow the same kind of format. The artwork on the front is really quite good, and the amount of information that's also on the back is quite good too. It is in multiple languages so that they can sell it in as many markets as possible. Generally though, I don't have any real issues with the information that's presented on the box. However, I would like to see some extra stuff. On occasion, and I know in particular this DHC 6 Twin Otter, this has on it, and I'm sure I've read it, it does say on here that it is a historical model and it was from a Matchbox mold. However, it doesn't give us the tooling date on there. So I would love to see on there the tooling date for the original creation of the model and also the release date of this one. So if this was like a 2020 version, I'd know that potentially the transfers and stuff inside is going to be up to date, whereas the tooling, the mold quality might not be quite as good. I think a little bit of transparency there would be fantastic. As mentioned, inside the box as well, you usually get cartograph transfers. I think they do use another company as well on occasion, but cartograph, from my understanding, is the one they mostly use. And the fact that they don't advertise that on the box as well is a bit confusing. Cartograph is quite a mark of quality with transfers these days, and a lot of companies will proudly put a logo for Cartograph on their boxes to point it out. So the fact that Revell are missing this trick is a bit confusing to me. Why wouldn't you tell your customers that you've got these high quality aspects? You might be able to notice on here that it says this kit is a level 4, and I think this kit is a level 3. So there is a skill level of sorts that Revell uses, but as I've discussed before in other videos, it effectively means nothing. Other companies who put a skill level on their kits will do so based on how difficult the kit physically is to build. So I imagine they'll sit down, have a discussion about it and say, this kit requires filling, this kit requires sanding, this kit requires, I don't know, scratch building perhaps to bring it up to a higher specification. There's excess flash that will need cleaning away, so modelling skills will be required. So the very low level skill level kits are the easy, snap together kind of models that require minimum modelling skills, and the more complicated ones require extra things, bits and pieces in order to complete them. Revell's skill level doesn't reflect that at all. All the numbers on the box mean 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many parts are in the kit? For example, on this box it says that a level 1 is a snap together kit that doesn't require any glue. Level 2 is a simple kit with up to 30 parts. And I don't really know of any kits that have less than 30 parts. So number 3 is a kit with over 30 but less than 100 parts. 4 is over 100 but less than 150. And 5 is over 150. Well, I could probably build a brand new Revell kit with over 150 parts, and it'll be quite good to build, and it will almost fall together, compared to something like the old P51, which requires considerable more effort and modelling skill in order to complete it, but they'll have a different skill level as a result. Perhaps Revell could change this in some way to actually reflect how difficult the kits are to build, and not just base it off the fact that there is a different part count. Inside the boxes as well, I find there to be some inconsistency. Some kits are beautiful and don't feature any flash, some have a little bit of flash, and others are caked in it. When I did my Revell B17 last year, I found that almost every single part had a lot of flash in it, but once you'd clean the flash off, it would go together like an absolute dream. The new Hurricane Mark II, which I've also built, didn't feature any flash, but I found that to be a bit underwhelming to build. It just wasn't as fun as the B17. And now I know this is an older kit, but the older kits tend to come with black and white instructions, which, I mean, it's a product of its time, but even online on the help center, I couldn't find any color versions to look at, and that would be a good thing to have. As you go through the stages, it's not too bad having that in black and white, but when you come to the painting stages, it's all different shades of grey. I don't know about you, but I would struggle to figure out what shade of grey is actually representing which kind of colour, and I find that very frustrating. The newer kits in the black boxes, they are generally all in colour, and that's a good thing to see when you come to the instructions. So it's nice to see that improvements are being made. But even though these newer instructions are printed in colour and are a considerable improvement, they still have a very annoying aspect that I'm not a fan of. So on here, all of their paint colours are annotated with a letter. You then have to go back to the beginning of the instructions and find the key. The key is a Revell paint colour. So Revell has its own range of paints, enamel and acrylic, and it will match up colours for the kits that you're building, much like other brands will do. But in this case, they won't simply use the number of the paint, they'll reassign the number of the paint to another letter, and then they'll use that letter throughout the instructions. This is an extra step. We don't need this. If I was using Revell colours, I'd be going back through the instructions and having to write in the colour numbers, because I'm not going to remember what these are. I can sort of understand why they might do this, and that's potentially because Revell doesn't make a colour for every specific shade of paint that might be used, and they might suggest a mix of a different colour, and they'll give that mix, where they've mixed, I don't know, 20% black with 80% yellow, another letter, and then that will be used throughout the instructions. But this again is just complicating it. Just show me on the page at the relevant step that ratio, and I'll just do it then. I know they probably don't want to look like they're copying other companies that just use that exact process, but I think if something works well, it makes sense to do it. Please change the annoying paint system, Revell. So we're still talking about the product, and I mentioned earlier about copyright dates. Having built some kits in the past, some of them had copyright dates on the outside, and you could sort of accept that for an older tooling, something from the 70s, 80s, 90s perhaps, but not today, not in today's modern age, where that's just an extra step for the modeler to have to sand off, especially if you're spending a lot of money on these kits. This is the Star Wars N1 Starfighter as seen from The Mandalorian. And I love that Revell has the license for Star Wars because they make some great Star Wars themed kits. And this is, objectively, a pretty decent kit as well. I do have a few issues with it which I'll explore in the unboxing when I come round to it. The details are a little soft. However, there is one big issue which we were just talking about. So whilst objectively the kit looks to be really well designed and the mould quality looks really good, there is a small issue that I have, and I wonder if you can see it on there. Let's see if the camera will focus without causing too much light. Can you make that out? That is a copyright stamp on the outside of the parts. That is moulded onto the outside surface and will need sanding off. This is a 2023 tooling, and they're still doing that kind of thing, just blows my mind. That's extra work that the model is going to have to sand off, or leave it there. I know this is the bottom of the model, so you may not see it when it's on display, but again, this is not something we expect from a kit that costs about £50. And when you're buying an expensive model kit, you want to know that you're getting a quality product. And the boxes are another little issue that I have. So this is quite a big box, it's a nice box. Bigger boxes tend to not be as structurally sound. They are side opening boxes, and I had it with the B17 where it actually arrived to me and the box was already open because of compression, and that risks damaging the products inside. I don't really care if it's a top opening box or a side opening box, as long as my parts inside are protected. And unfortunately, or luckily, there's nothing wrong that I can see with this kit, but can you see inside the box how much empty space there is? All of that empty space, so I can put my hand in, that's where it comes up to. All of that empty space inside the box is space that allows the kit to move around during transit. Any extra movement can result in damage to the model. This is another area that I'd like to see Revell improve. I understand that this is probably a standard box size and they're just throwing the sprues in there to save money on buying new box templates and things like that, but wouldn't it make sense to design the kit to fit a smaller box? That way you could save on shipping, and you could get more in a container, and you could fit more on the shelves in the shops. Just another small point that I think could be improved. Despite these small little issues that I have with Revell, I think the pricing is generally acceptable. As with other manufacturers, they aim their pricing at different levels, so the smaller and the cheaper kits with less parts are accessible to people with lower budgets, and the more complex with higher levels of detail are available to those with bigger budgets. But that being said, it sort of swings us back round to, expectations and what you're going to get inside the box. So you would have to ask yourself, if you're picking up a P51, which is a really ancient ex-Frog tooling, I'm pretty sure, for about £6, £7, £8, and then compare it to the fact that you could get this P47, which is much newer and it's about the same price, does beg the question of, are all kits created equally? And are you going to get your value for money? And if you did have a problem with any of your kits, as with other companies, they have customer services which you could contact to help rectify them. And now this is a positive for Revell. I've never had to contact them. So that means, despite the issues I've mentioned, that I've never had broken parts that perhaps I've not been able to fix myself. I've never had parts missing, and there's never been a reason to contact customer service for spare parts. So on one side, that's a real positive about Revell's element of quality control to ensure that all the parts are included in the kit. However, perhaps it's on the other side of the sword, it's not great because that means I've not experienced that element and I can't really comment on how good they are. But yeah, I think we're pretty much coming to the end of my thoughts now. I do like buying Revell kits, but I do, when I buy them, have to prepare myself for the things that are a little bit disappointing. On the whole, I think that the majority of their kits, this is the B17 I built, absolutely fantastic kit to build, great fun, took me a few weeks, had its issues with flash and a few other things which you can see in the build video, and on the whole, I had a lot of fun, even though it's got a slightly complicated paint scheme on it. 2010 tooling, I think that was. Pretty good. But then you have more modern stuff, and I also built the 2023 Hawker Hurricane in 1/32 scale. This was built a couple of months after it was announced and released, and whilst it is technically a perfectly acceptable kit, it builds up into a very nice representation. There's just not a lot going on. I think this was like a £45 model when I bought it new. You don't get anything extra really. You get your cockpit details, which are quite good off the bat, but you can't really see them in there, and you have the option of having the flaps down. Other than that, I don't even remember the instructions having the options to raise or lower the landing gear. There's no options to see the gun bays open, which other kits in smaller scales for less money sort of come as standard. So whilst this was technically a absolutely fine build, nothing really wrong with it, it just felt like it was missing that extra value. But yeah, I think it's probably time to round this one up. Everything I've said here is my own opinion, and it comes from a place of love because I really want Revell to improve. I do enjoy building Revell kits, and I would like to get some more of them in the future. I particularly like the what if fictional German aircraft that they've been releasing recently. And they do make some very interesting subjects. But again, I just need to clear out my stash quite a bit so I can get these things down onto the workbench. But let me know in the comments, what did you think of my opinion on Revell? Do you agree with it, or have you got any counterpoints for me? As always, quick shout out to my channel members and patrons for the extra support they give the channel. A massive thanks to these guys on screen for feeding my plastic addiction. If you'd like to join them, take a look at the links in the description. Alternatively, if you'd like to support the channel in other ways, there is more information under the video as well. However, the best way to support the channel for free is by subscribing with notifications turned on so you never miss a modelling video. Finally though, last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time. And I thought it only fair to make a video So join me on the workbench. So join me at the workbench today whilst I did a my word, why can't I talk today? So I think it's probably worth. Oh my word. Get me hurricane down. You're gonna get me hurricane down. Yeah, I probably won't put that in. And that's that one done.